our first movie out of 6 again. It's just gonna happen that way.
It's gonna be a continuous process till the end of time.
Oh god.
I say that, and then we're gonna have like a drought for a while. No, at least not through the month.
Our first movie this week is Edge of Tomorrow, which is, by the looks of it, Tom Cruise's new big blockbuster action movie that he has at least every year or every other year.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was in pre-production and Oblivion was like getting ready to come out, and they looked exactly the same before we had seen either one.
Yeah.
And I would often get them confused, but this was back when this was called All You Need Is Kill, which is actually the name of the Japanese novel it's based off of. And after watching the movie, when I first heard that title, everybody thought, okay, that's kind of ridiculous, and it doesn't have a ring to it. But honestly, after watching it now, I did not feel like I was watching a movie called Edge of Tomorrow. I think All You Need Is Kill was actually a more fitting title. Even though that title still doesn't make a lot of sense.
They called it Cruise to the Future.
Anyway.
Shoo! That was way out there right now.
So the beginning starts, and it's actually pretty jarring because we get the Warner Brothers logo, and then it starts to... For a split second, I thought the projector had fucked it up. Because that looks like what would happen if a digital projector fucked it up.
Kind of. It reminded me a lot of like a potential like issue with a regular projector too.
But then we go into news footage, and it's pretty much like the beginning of I Am Legend. Minus the Emma Thompson cameo, unfortunately. And basically, Cruz is to report to Brendan Gleeson. And now he's under Brendan Gleeson's command, and Brendan Gleeson's first command to him is, I'm really simplifying this by the way.
Yeah.
Is, just to get to the main plot. Is to report to Bill Paxton, where he's basically going to be put into battle. It reminded me of the battle scene in Ants with the termites, actually. Yeah. And he gets there, and it's kind of like a cross between... It's kind of like if you took the crew from Aliens and put them in the barracks from Avatar. I was getting Cameron vibes a lot.
Very much so.
And I was thinking, because of this, maybe Paxton's casting was just a giant in-joke. I don't know. Or just a coincidence. I don't know.
No, I'm pretty sure it was an in-joke.
Which is really funny because Aliens is featured in our next movie, but we'll get to that soon enough.
Yep.
Anyway, so the plot of this movie has been compared by pretty much every critic and audience member under the sun to Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day as a sci-fi action movie, which apparently is a really weird concept to people. The critics are really reacting positively to it.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm wondering exactly how this concept will go with audiences. Because this movie is kind of unexpected. I mean, I know the plot is kind of talked about in the trailer, I think. But I don't know how much they actually showed what this is. But basically, Cruz goes into battle, gets himself killed, and then wakes up exactly where he started this day. And much like the Bill Murray loop in Groundhog Day, that's just what happens. He just keeps dying and he keeps coming back in the exact same place. It's like he's playing a video game. He's like inside a video game is what it is, basically. Just with unlimited amount of lives. Until another plot development, but but then he eventually teams up with this basically warrior soldier played by Emily Blunt, who's basically playing Jane Lynch's character in Wreck-It Ralph. And they team up to fight these alien-type creatures in this futuristic wasteland. I don't know exactly how much I can really say without going into plot. This is one of those... First off, I will compliment this movie for being extremely fast-paced.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, one of the main reasons I don't know where spoilers start and end is because, okay, there was a moment where, I guess a guy in the audience had to take like a prescription or something,
Mm-hmm.
because he got up and walked out, and his watch was lit up. And when I saw his watch walk by, I saw that we were like well over an hour in, and that blew my mind. And the movie's under 2 hours, so that's impressive anyway.
Yeah.
So basically, he just has to keep going back over and over again until he can figure out exactly how to stop because what happens is the first time around, they get a surprise attack from the alien creatures, and they all end up killed. So he has to prevent this from happening. Is why he has to keep going back. And this is where I think people might get confused by the movie they're watching. It might surprise you to learn that this movie is hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
And not in the so bad it's hilarious way or the unintentional way. They use the setup and actually bring a lot of humor to it. Like, a lot of humor. And it's not that cheap, easy laugh blockbuster humor. That's actually, like, they find humor in the whole concept. Because, as Groundhog Day proved, it's kind of almost impossible to do this concept without having a lot of comedic elements.
That's true.
Like, he'll come close to saving the day, and then he'll get hit by a truck, or he'll try to roll under a truck to get away from Bill Paxton and accidentally get run over by it and has to keep going back. And they do a lot of interesting things, because I think the main issue here might be if people learn that, and people watching the movie, like in the first half hour or so, might get worried that it's going to be redundant. But they do a lot of things to get away from that. Like, after a while, we see, like, the first few times we see him do the same day over and over again in exactly the same order. But then it starts to speed it up a little bit through editing and then montage form and whatever. And then eventually he takes different directions, and it always has a fresh idea every time he comes back.
Yeah.
You were comparing it to Source Code, too, yeah?
Very much so.
But they don't always show everything, and it gets to a point to where there's he's walking away and two guys come in to fight him, and this is the first time we're seeing this. But obviously he can dodge every hit they've done, because apparently they've done this like 15 times. And they also do that. They also handle that really well with there's kind of a somewhat, but not really, love story with the Emily Blunt character. But basically, he gets to know her through having to do this over and over and over again, because her thing is she knows what's wrong with him, because this had happened to her until it wasn't. Which is a complicated plot point that you will learn when you say it.
Yeah.
So she sees him in battle and recognizes what's going on and says, come and find me when you wake up. So he does that and has to convince her with that, and she takes him down to her little tech guy, who is Noah Taylor, who's like the only other recognizable face in this. There's only like 5 recognizable faces in this, despite being a action star headed action movie in June. And as we get to know her, basically, he gets to know her backstory, so he starts to have feelings for her. But the interesting way they do that is, usually when you have a movie like this that's almost non-stop action, you kind of have to slow it down and sacrifice that to throw in the backstory so we have a reason to care. But the really clever thing they did here is they skipped all that bullshit, because he's basically talking about her backstory because it happened in one of the many times we didn't see go by already. It's like, isn't there a theory, or like Harold Ramis or somebody confirmed it, that Bill Murray was supposedly stuck in the time of Groundhog Day for like thousands and thousands of years. So
I can buy that.
Which is a really interesting theory. We never quite learn exactly how long he's been doing it, but we're led to believe a long time, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't see, but they're able to hint at, because he knows all this stuff already, because he's been doing this for God knows how long. It's interesting to learn that, because I didn't know this going in either, I don't know how many people do. I've been hearing some complaints about this movie, apparently after like all the Mission Impossible movies and Oblivion and stuff like that, not a lot of people, but some people are kind of tired of Tom Cruise as an action star, because we all know how great of an actor that he is.
Yeah.
But he does so many of these action movies. Some of them just kind of blend in together too and end up being forgettable. And I've heard some responses to this movie say they just, you know, they don't really need... They could probably go the rest of their life without another Cruise starring action movie. But he's not playing his typical character in this.
No.
Because he's basically kind of a... I won't say cowardly, but he's not exactly really prepared to go into battle. Like, he's trying desperately to not go into battle. And one of the very first things he mentions in the movie is that he gets lightheaded around the sight of blood. So you know it's not going to be like the hardcore Cruise characters we've seen in other movies.
Yeah.
So, can you imagine the Mission Impossible movies if his Ethan Hunt was afraid of blood?
Oh, wow. Completely different movie right there.
He wouldn't have thrown Philip Seymour Hoffman into the truck, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
But he gets to do, but that's the great thing though, is Cruise actually gets to really show off a lot of what he can do here, because he has to do the he does the comedy really well. He can do the drama really well, and there's a lot of scenes where he gets to do there's a lot of his movies where we've gotten to see his agility as an action star, like running down the tower in Ghost Protocol, for God's sake. A lot of that is in here too, despite the type of character that he plays. And that really shows how likable of an actor that he is, that he's able to do those effortless transitions like that, all in the same movie. I actually kind of liked Emily Blunt and actually kind of bought her as the badass warrior, which is weird for me to say because I'm really not an Emily Blunt fan at all.
Yeah.
Like, I can't... Even in Looper, I thought she was kind of forced. So, I actually can't think of another movie that I've complimented her in yet, so this might be the first.
No, I'm saying, knowing you as well as I have, I would say that this is probably the first time you said anything good about her.
So, and just something that it's just, all in all, the great thing that it does is it's able to be fresh and original and always have, like, a new idea up its sleeve. Which may or may, it depends on the audience as to whether or not they're put off by that.
Yeah.
Because not to degrade anybody, it's just some people just want to go see, you know, an action movie that doesn't mean anything. But this movie actually has a lot of really creative ideas, and it feels really... I know it's weird to say original when it's based off a novel, but as far as action movies go, this is extremely fresh and original.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's hardcore action throughout, which I think is why a lot of people like it so much. Well, actually, before I get to that, I'll talk about... the director is a director I feel like we haven't seen for a while, but he was like the bee's knees for a while there.
Yeah.
The director is Doug Liman, who did The Bourne Identity, Swingers, Go, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And there's actually a scene that reminded me of Mr. and Mrs. Smith when they're in like the car with a trailer on the back, and then they have to fight one of the creatures off, and then they just drive around in the beat-to-shit car. It's a lot like them driving around in the van after the chase in Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Yeah.
Now, the problem here is I'm kind of afraid, as really, really good as this movie is, and as much as people are really taking to it, I'm afraid it might be one of those movies that's defined by its ending.
That's what I was trying to tell you the whole time.
Not to the extreme, but the thing
Yeah.
that came to mind was Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I mean, I know there's a couple of reasons, like the refrigerator that people hate Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but honestly, it always comes back to the aliens. Because, hate on me if you want to, but Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is perfectly fine, besides the aliens in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But everybody hates that movie because of that. I'm afraid this movie is going to be defined by its ending and how much people hate it. Because it's kind of... okay. Obviously, they don't... Is this a spoiler or not?
See, that's the
It's
hard
about-
part about talking about any of this.
It's about a little over halfway through. But I think this has been warning enough. So they've probably skipped ahead by now if they thought I was going to say something, so now I can say something.
Yeah.
Obviously, eventually, the plot gets to a point to where he gets out of a loop,
Mm-hmm.
and he has only one more try to save everybody.
Yep.
From that point on, it kind of loses that edge that it had. No pun intended. It kind of, I don't know, it's still fine. It never totally 100% shits the bed like people are probably going to tell you it does.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that's the thing, when I had heard that the ending was hated, if you're watching the movie, you can pretty much figure out how it's going to end.
Yeah.
With a movie like this, if you're watching a movie like this and you know it has a hated ending, you can pretty much figure out what that ending is. It's pretty, like, right there. But yeah, that last battle and all the preparation and all that stuff before that, that's kind of, I think it kept the movie from being much greater than it could have. Like this, that's what I was saying. This movie is really, really good,
mm-hmm.
but it was that close to being really great. So,
it kind of had that Vanilla Sky like tinge to it towards the end too.
Are you sure you're just not thinking of the fact that
No.
Chris is the star of it?
No, it's like after the movie was over, it would be completely believable for the last words to be "Open your eyes." That's what I'm talking about. Without trying to spoil anything, that's basically what I saw from that.
But yeah, it's still really, really good. I'm just afraid. Like, that's not. I'm not even really bashing the ending.
No.
I'm just saying I'm afraid the ending's going to get too much hate.
It's not an ending that's going to really work well with the general public.
I'm not sure it's going to be one of those endings where people do the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull thing, where
no.
the movie's perfectly fine and then the ending makes them come out saying, "Oh my god, that sucked." So, yeah, it's not that extreme. And like I said, if you're watching the movie, you can pretty much figure it out.
It's a fun time. It really is.
So, and the action scenes are spectacular.
Yeah, they are.
Some of the effects are a little shoddy and obvious CG, but most of them look really great.
What are those creatures?
They go into it.
They're called mimics, but I don't know exactly what they are, and they're the freaky looking things.
There's a lot of great scenes in movies lately where people jump out of planes.
Yeah.
And as a person afraid of heights, I actually really love those scenes.
Really? It's interesting.
Because it's not from first person point of view.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can't watch the scene in Men in Black 3 when he jumps off the building in first person point of view.
Oh, man.
But these jumping out of plane scenes, like in Godzilla and Captain Phillips and this one, those scenes are awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah, I would, obviously, this is not going to be the movie that takes the box office this weekend, sadly, but...
No, unfortunately not.
if you have the choice between the two, and your spouse will allow it, choose this one. Please.
Give it a little bit of money, please.
Yeah.
I think it did like $1.5 million, $2 million on Thursday night business alone.
1.8.
Yeah. I knew it was something in that.
So, and related to what I just said, we have yet another take your girlfriend to this and you may get laid movie, which is why this will make so much money. When they come out in packs.
This made $8 million Thursday night.
I heard it was expected to. Did it actually?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. Okay, people. I'm just gonna start off saying this right now. If you are an avid book reader, and this book is like the meaning of your life now, temporarily until the next fad, or the next movie.
Yes.
Not for this, obviously, but
no, definitely not.
The next young adult fiction movie comes out. And this is a movie that you are absolutely just all over right now, and you can just there's just nothing you love more right now. Go ahead and click. Where is it? Right here or right here?
Right here in the bottom.
Right here.
Yeah.
Go ahead and click dislike, and then just leave. It's probably your best bet right now. So now that that's on the table, we can talk about The Fault in Our Stars.
Advocating
Which,
dislikes.
once again, like Edge of Tomorrow, is really getting some critical acclaim behind it.
Yeah.
Which really surprises me. Okay. Let me start off by saying I may not have had a totally... I try to be as open-minded as possible when I watch movies. And when the critical acclaim started to happen, I was thinking, you know... And Shailene Woodley's getting a lot of huge talk about her performance.
Yeah.
Positive. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I had the wrong idea. Because, admittedly, I was making fun of this trailer so much.
Yeah. Were.
Because it's one of those trailers that just leaves himself open for it. I will give them credit. They took out the line where she says, "We're a hot mess." That was one of the lines that I really, really just... But okay, the line's not in the movie, so it's okay now.
Yeah, I'm happy it's not in the movie.
Okay. Every year we have a few movies that make a shitload of money because they're based on young adult fiction books that impressionable teenage girls and lonely housewives love. So, one ingenious author, I don't even know this person's name or whether it's a guy or a girl, but the author of this book is a genius because they knew exactly how to make a shitload of money and get a shitload of fans. Because you'll notice these young adult fiction books that get these massive, massive followings. None of them are original. They're all the same recycled shit. We're talking post-Harry Potter. It's just the same recycled shit from the other popular novels. And even those popular novels take from a bunch of older shit.
Mm.
That the impressionable teenage girls that fangirl over it probably don't even know exist. Well, as far as unoriginality selling goes, the author of this book thought, what are two extremely, extremely tired things? Technically three. Three extremely tired subjects that we can take and make something with. The first one is, it's a touchy subject, of course, but in fiction, we can talk about it in fiction, openly. If you really, really want to get attention and you want to get people emotionally attached to your novel or movie or whatever it is, you throw cancer into it. Hi, Nicholas Sparks. And there are so many movies, going all the way back to Terms of Endearment, probably even earlier. There are so many movies that have shown us the horrors of cancer and how it ruins people's lives and what it does to their soul in itself, how far down it brings them, emotionally and otherwise. And we've seen just the physical horror too. Just movies upon movies upon movies have touched on this. We just reviewed Decoding Annie Parker less than a month ago.
Mm.
So there's that. Then we have this craze about world-weary teenagers that think they've seen it all at 17. That other teenagers can relate to. Because these teenagers are wisecracking and talk in sarcastic tones because they think they are wise and unique. And they have a really deep perspective on the world that nobody understands. And they will go on tirade after tirade about how unfair life is. And it makes them really relatable to the hipster above everything teenagers, that most teenagers feel at 17. And of course our third one is teenage romance. This ingenious author thought, I'm gonna take all three of these fucking things and put them together in one story. And I have a fucking cash cow here. And sure enough, impressionable teenage girls and lonely housewives swiped this book right off the shelves. And I think, and here's another thing, these novels are so bankable, I think it's getting to a point now that the movie rights are sold before the goddamn things are even published.
I would say that's probably correct.
I'm pretty sure the script for this movie was written with the unpublished book that the author had before it hit bookstores. That's how confident they are that people will just eat this shit up. And sure enough, we were in there with quite a few people. It was the first showing.
Yeah, and a small auditorium, too.
Yeah, so it felt even like a bigger audience than it actually was.
Yes.
And sure enough, I'm pretty sure they were all book readers.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were all teenage girls or middle-aged women. And they were made to eat this shit up. Every single solitary thing this movie would throw at them, they were just taking in.
Yep.
And love. Now, okay. I feel bad when I do that because it makes it sound like I am displeased with them taking joy in something. I understand if you take that much joy in something. Believe me, there are plenty of movies that I feel that way about.
Yeah.
Tarantino. Tarantino could film dog shit in a plastic bag, and I would just take it in with as much glee as humanly possible.
And buy the soundtrack.
Yes.
Because I definitely would be amazing.
And buy the script at Books A Million or Borders. No, Borders is dead now. However, what's really bothersome here, number one, is the fact that these are probably the same people that just leave their TV on Lifetime Movie Network 24/7. And buy, Nicholas Sparks books by the pounds. Which can only mean one thing. They are so taken and enraptured by this story that they've seen hundreds and thousands of times with the exact same outcome and the exact same points. How much can you enjoy the exact same movie or the exact same book over and over and over again? And it tries to do things to make it original. It tries so hard to make this lead character unique. But honestly, I hate to say this because of how much I fucking love this movie, and I love Ellen Page's performance.
Yeah.
Juno, I think, really put this in full force. This precocious teenage girl that knows the way of the world when she's in her teen years. And that's just... The whole reason this movie exists is so that impressionable teens have Twitter and Facebook status updates. That's why these books and movies exist. There will be... Keep an eye on Twitter this weekend. How many tweets are going to be a quote from this movie that makes the teenager quoting the movie feel really, really deep when she says it? I know I might be a little sexist. Surely there's some teenage guys out there too that maybe, like this. I don't know. There's grown men that like romantic comedies. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe, it doesn't have to be because it's a teenage girl. It could be a teenager in general you can relate to because the age thing. But I think that demographic is it's got a pretty secluded target audience. I just had to be PC there for a second. Continuing though, I bashed all the cancer movies in existence. I had to be a little PC. Now here's the thing. I'm going to tell you why this movie really doesn't work. Because this movie has really genuine scenes in it. There's one fantastic scene in this movie. A scene so fucking good. I have no idea how it ended up in this movie. I'm talking about that. It's my only compliment. I'll go ahead and throw it out now. Shailene Woodley's character, Hazel Grace Lancaster, her name is etched in my head forever Because almost every single time somebody says her name, they say her full goddamn name. When she calls 911, they ask, what's your name? She gives her whole goddamn name. Anyway, Shailene Woodley's character is obsessed with this author. This really artsy author that wrote a book about cancer. That she gives to her new boyfriend, Gus. Because when I think teenage heartthrobs, the name Gus comes to mind immediately. Anyway, his name is Augustus, but that just makes you think of Augustus Gloop, which was anything but a fucking heartthrob. Maybe a heart attack, but not a heartthrob.
Heartthrob before the attack.
Anyway, so she's obsessed with this author. So, the amazing, incredible Gus, who we're going to talk about in a second, don't worry, basically says, I'm the most amazing guy in the world. I'm going to get her the chance to meet this guy. So she gets little emails from him that say, hey, he's Willem Dafoe, so I got to do the Willem Dafoe voice. Well, she thinks it's Willem Dafoe. It's a very popular book. I guess spoilers don't matter. I'm sure anybody that's going to track this review down has read the book. Unfortunately. So, finally, a few scenes of drama later, she gets her trip to Amsterdam to go visit him. Because she wants to know why the book ends the way it does. Mm-hmm. Because it ends in half a sentence, which I believe is what Bret Easton Ellis did with the Rules of Attraction.
Yep.
So, how original there, too. The Rules of Attraction, it's the only thing you didn't steal from.
Ow.
Cancer movies, teenage romance, precocious teenagers, Bret Easton Ellis. Something doesn't belong here.
That sentence will never be uttered again by anyone in the history of time.
So, anyway, she finally gets her trip to Amsterdam, and she goes to visit him, and it's Willem Dafoe. And there is this fantastic scene, or a really, really great scene, where they sit down with him, and he is not what she thought he was at all. And he basically, his wife or whoever she is basically his lapdog and does everything on command, literally command.
His assistant.
And he says, he's trying to prove a point, so he tells her to put on a Swedish rap album. And he blares this music, and he's just jamming out to it. And we linger on Gus and Hazel, and you can just see them reacting and realizing. That is their absolute moment of realization. This guy is so not the guy they were trading emails with.
He's Jimmy King. He really is. He's Jimmy King.
And that scene is great, and Willem Dafoe is, as if this is a surprise, Willem Dafoe is great.
Yeah.
That scene is so good. I seriously felt like I suddenly was watching a different movie.
Yeah.
Because all the way up to this point, I was calling bullshit on everything I saw. So with this genuine reality of a scene, because the whole movie, I guess that's the point, the whole movie, they're basically stuck in this bubble of teenage romance, where even though they both are sick and dying, nothing's gonna touch their teenage romance. It's this scene where Willem Dafoe's character just brings reality crashing the fuck down on them. And there's a follow-up scene where they go to Anne Frank's house. That's also a nice scene. Mm-hmm. And my first thought was, holy shit, did Willem Dafoe just completely turn this movie around and it's going to be good now? But not really. It kind of stopped after the Anne Frank scene. Because, no, it stopped dead in the middle of the Anne Frank scene. Do you know why? Because there is a scene in this movie where the two lovers kiss and they are applauded by a crowd. That scene exists in this movie.
It does.
Just as we had completely caught ourselves and realized we're in reality. Because here's the thing. Okay, this is where the whole thing goes to shit. You know, the whole thing was shit already, but this is when it just completely fucks itself over. The opening scene of this movie, when I say opening scene, I mean the very first scene. it is a close-up on Shailene Woodley's eyes. Because they're trying to be an indie movie, they just happen to get a wide release.
Mm-hmm.
And she's narrating about how that stupid fucking, you can't solve problems with a Peter Gabriel song line. Whatever the fuck that means. The big message this whole movie is trying to say is, this is her exact line, this is not a sugar-coated version. This is reality. It's like Maleficent trying to be the non-sugar-coated version. 2 weeks in a row they fucked this up.
Yeah.
She says, this is not that. This is reality. This is the real world. This is not happy. After she set that whole thing up, this movie has a scene where a crowd applauds them kissing.
In the Anne Frank house.
Which is totally inappropriate.
Indeed.
Okay. Now I want to talk to you about the main reason this movie doesn't work. Yeah, that's not the main reason. In any other movie it totally would be, but no, this movie actually fucks something up even more. Okay. I'm going to give this movie credit for something, but I have to immediately shoot that credit down. Sign of a great film. I don't know why I said film there. I was going to say movie, and my mouth said film. That was weird. I was possessed for a second.
Interesting.
This movie tries to do something a little clever and original. Kind of. Not really, but kind of. Obviously, the whole setup is the fact that we're basically going to follow Hazel until she gets really, really, really sick and dies. Because we get those dramatic scenes where it's like, one day she's great, one day she's questioning, you know, why the fuck is my life like this? The next day she'll be, oh my god, I can't breathe, I think I'm going to die, oh no, the parents got to panic, we got to go to the hospital, oh, drama. And this is just going to happen until she dies. But the movie kind of puts a little tiny wrench in that, and we focus the other... It's basically the same thing, but they put it on another character. The great, wonderful, almighty Gus. The god among men, Gus. Now, here's the thing. The reason that doesn't work is because... the whole reason this movie really, really doesn't work, and probably where it failed from the get-go, is the character of Gus. From beginning to end. Obviously Gus is supposed to be one of those cute, charming, oh my god, if only I had a boyfriend like that. Instead I have my sleeveless, backwards hat-wearing dude I'm watching this movie with, but in this novel I would love to have this guy. This may be me being too harsh on poor, wonderful Gus, but, what's that fucking guy's name, even?
Oh,
they're gonna try to make him a thing after this, I'm sure, but I don't even know the fucking guy's name.
he was
now.
actually already in Carrie and Divergent. That's where you know him from.
Whatever.
His name is Ansel Elgort.
Anyway, this character does not have a natural bone in his body. Every single thing this character does is supposed to be cute and charming. But the problem is that this character... Now remember, Hazel told us in the very first scene of the movie, this isn't the sugar-coated life. This is the real hardcore life that doesn't, you know, pull any punches or doesn't show mercy to anybody. This is the hardcore real life. If this Gus existed in real life, everyone would think that he was fucking weird and tried way too hard to be cute and charming, and nobody would like him for it. They do the Twilight thing. You know, the thing everybody loved in Twilight. We realize that Gus is falling for Hazel immediately because they're at the same support group, because there's a stupid fucking subplot where Gus is there with his buddy who's going blind and eventually is blind. He's basically trying to be a blind McLovin.
He reminded me of John Cryer a lot, too.
He's
trying to be.
But anyway, so he's there to support him. That's the reason he's there. But he just has to say, oh, and by the way, as if I'm not quirky enough, I've got one fucking leg. Not entirely. It's just like the bottom of his cap is gone.
He says he's a cyborg.
Well, anyway, yeah, that's the whole setup of the movie. Actually, no, we'll go into that in a second. I want to continue about how much I hate Gus. Now, here's the thing. I absolutely don't care about... What are you showing me?
I'm showing you the person that's in charge of the support group. I thought that's who that was.
Yeah,
someone you don't like.
Well, here's the thing. They do this whole setup with Mike Birbiglia.
Trying to be Stephen Lynch with the guitar and everything.
And they give us a whole backstory on him.
Yeah.
But then for some reason, we only see him in the beginning, and then after the support groups leave the movie, he never comes back. But for some reason, he was important enough to get a backstory.
Yeah.
Alright. Anyway, because this movie had to be just barely over 2 hours. Because that's the cool thing to do now. Now, let's talk more about Gus. Okay. He has this thing where... No. Okay, I will talk about this now. The whole point of this movie... I read the plot synopsis for this movie when I first heard about it. And I believe it went something like... Hazel and Gus are absolutely meant for each other because... she's dying of cancer and has to carry around an oxygen tank, which makes her, quirky and indie and awkward. And he's missing a leg, which makes him quirky and indie and awkward. So they're a quirky, indie, and awkward match made in heaven. And the best part about both of them is that they strive to get away from the conventional, I think is how they described it. So here's the thing. Hazel and Gus apparently live to not be conventional. That is their whole purpose in their very short lives. Is to go away from the mainstream. Well, for starters, I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but being a hipster isn't actually all that original anymore. So, I don't really know what they want to accomplish. Now... as if the character of Gus wasn't already under my skin, they decided to give him a cute little character trait that goes through the whole movie, all the way to his goddamn funeral. That's how attached to this character trait they are. He's really charming because he lives with a metaphor. This metaphor is... they're both standing outside, and he's trying so fucking hard, and in the real world would never ever succeed with this bullshit. But Hazel's falling right under his spell, even though she's trying to do the hardcore, I'm numb to all feelings because my life sucks. But here, she's finally starting to like him. So what he does is he pulls out a cigarette and puts it in his mouth, and she throws a holy shit fit. Because he's supposedly a smoker. But he's not a smoker. He buys and carries around packs of cigarettes. I don't know how much that runs him, by the way. But he buys and carries around packs of cigarettes so he can put them in his mouth just as a metaphor. Something along the lines of... with death this close to me, it can't get to me, or something. Some bullshit like that. I don't know. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, that just totally fried my brain for a second. I gotta remember where I was now. So another thing is... they drive this in so much. I know, okay. I understand you're trying so hard for them to go against the grain and do everything unconventional. But you do the cigarette thing, and then you have Hazel's t-shirt. We get a moment where the last thing you want to do... I know it's probably mostly teenage girls that are watching this, so I'm just talking to a brick wall right now. But honestly, the very last thing you want to do when a teenager is on their high horse is to encourage them and tell them how smart and witty they are. Because they're going to turn into horrible, horrible, unbearable people, probably. But her mother, played by Laura Dern, of all people, because she's just not doing much lately. I don't think she wants to sign on for Jurassic Park 4, but she'll do this. She encourages this because there is a point in time where Hazel's doing her I'm sophisticated bullshit, and it actually makes her mom say, "Oh my god, when did you grow up so much?" The scene that makes her mom say, "When did you grow up so much?" is Hazel wearing a t-shirt with a picture of a pipe on it. And the picture, there are words underneath the picture of the pipe that say, "This is not a pipe." Now, of course, if you're a sophisticated book-reading teenager, you'll understand that this is not a pipe because it's a picture of a pipe. Or it's a t-shirt with a picture of a pipe. And neither one of those things is actually a pipe. We are so fucking deep in this right now, I don't think I can find my way out. Oh. And the problem with all of this is that with the way we live now, this is what is considered really deep and thought-provoking to impressionable teenagers. And they can't... I've always wondered, I don't understand, when people want to feel individual, apparently what they do is they go on Twitter or Facebook and they post song lyrics or book excerpts or whatever. If these people that do this, I'm talking real life now, if people that do this are so heartfelt and genuine, why aren't they just saying what they feel themselves? They're letting young adult fiction and fucking Taylor Swift songs speak for them. And these are the people that rush to a movie like this, because that's how it makes them feel. And I don't understand. And I think it's a horrible time that we live in when movies like this define how people express their feelings. So, I don't know. Oh, and by the way, there's a couple of things we still haven't touched on yet. I wrote notes for this and they're all over the place right now.
Yeah, they are.
Well, first off, I talk about the fact that between cancer movies and teenage fiction romance and, you know, precocious teenager movies, with characters so hell-bent on not being conventional, they're stuck in a really fucking obvious movie that you can see every possible turn coming to. Now, I throw in another thing. They do the just friends thing, where one of them is really all about the relationship and the others know we're just friends. Way to be really, really away from the conventional Hazel Grace Lancaster. You know what? I'm so all over the place, I think I just want to end this. Oh, and they try to be self-referential, because that always goes over so well. Because like I had to talk about before, I've had to talk about so many times, we live in an age now where self-referential is so common that if you make a reference to the cliche you're performing, everybody thinks it's okay. And you can go ahead and do the cliche as long as you say, oh, by the way, I'm about to do a cliche. See, I did the cliche, isn't that great? I'm being serious. In her little narration, Hazel actually refers to her life as the cancer genre. There's actually a point in time in the movie where Gus refers to... What happens is she writes a letter back to Willem Dafoe's character, but she's really pretentious about it. But she says she was only pretentious because he's pretentious in his writing, even though she fucking worships the ground he walks on. And when she reads her letter to Gus to make sure it's okay, Gus calls her out on being pretentious. I've got to tell you that my head almost fucking exploded when the guy who says, "I put death in my teeth so it can't get to me," calls somebody out for being pretentious. This movie is a sad state of affairs. I don't know how it's getting all the critical acclaim, but I know it's going to be the talk of Twitter for years to come. So, it's just going to be that, and my opinion here is going to be totally worthless.
Yeah,
so,
we hated Divergent, too.
Anybody that's going to track this review down, what I'm saying is going to fall completely on deaf ears. Because it's probably teenagers who worship the ground Hazel Grace Lancaster walks on. And of course, if you want to be like her, you gotta strive to get away from the conventional and quote movies like this. It's a bummer.
That's how you
It's a real fucking bummer. And this movie is gonna make so much goddamn money.
Yeah.
And be the cause of so many tears. And they do that thing where everybody knows what they're in for, one, because I already read the book, and two, because of what fucking genre they're in. And they fall for it every goddamn time. There was so much laughter in this movie from all the happiness. Every time Gus did something charming and silly to win the heart of Hazel, everybody just laughed hysterically at his wonderful indie escapades, knowing full well that this laughter is going to turn to fucking tears and sniffling by the end of it. Because the happier you make the characters in the movie, the harder you're going to cry later. And the person that wrote this book and the person that adapted it into this movie exactly know what the audience is going to do. So they have completely calculated this movie to do exactly that. Because it doesn't have enough respect for people to, trust that maybe we can get an emotional reaction out of them without doing the same old shit. But, at the same time, they obviously don't respect the audience, because what has this audience done to be respected when they eat it up just as they were expected to? I guarantee a movie exactly like this one will be out this time next year. And it'll just be this ongoing thing forever. And new generations of teenagers will feel sophisticated when they put it on their Twitter feeds. It's the only reason this shit exists.
Some of these crowds, though, are not used to independent movies and the way that independent movies work, so it's completely, foreign concept to them to see something like this. But someone like us who watches stuff like that, it's kind of like, well, this is same old, same old.
The point being, this movie's going to make a shitload of money because the author that wrote it knew exactly the audience they were going to be reaching, and that this is the kind of book that just flies off the shelves. And like I said, books like this probably already have the movie rights sold before they even hit the bookshelves. Because they know that's a cash cow too.
Yeah, of course.
I can't think of any other reason this keeps happening. So, we can go on now. To totally different territory. This is a movie that's getting a limited release. The next two movies are getting limited releases today. And I don't think The Sacrament's VOD, but I think Trust Me is. I know Trust Me is. I don't know if The Sacrament is or not. But they're both also in really limited theatrical releases. You just heard me say it. I'm talking about The Sacrament, which, if you've been watching these, I don't know. I imagine, the views that we do get are just, people that randomly come across them. So it's probably not the same recurring people. Maybe, 3 people are recurring.
We have more of a following you would think.
But, to those 2 or 3 people, you may have noticed by now that I really fucking love Ty West.
Yes.
Who is an indie horror director. Who really, really, really knows how to do horror the right way. Except when he half-assed it in the ABCs of Death, but who could blame him? He has brought us a new movie, and he's brought it to us with Eli Roth, who is a producer. And there's been some confusion with this movie, because apparently it's been getting a mixed reaction, because with Ty West as the writer and director, he's also his editor. He's Rodriguez-ing it. And Eli Roth as a producer. Everybody's expecting a hardcore horror movie. But apparently a lot of people are trying to say that it's not one. I think if you, well, Ty West filmography. Okay, House of the Devil is one of those, not exactly an exorcism movie, but the devil is involved. It's hard to explain without blowing the ending.
We'll be talking about that in a couple of months. Trust me.
And The Innkeepers is a ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
This is not really traditional horror like those. So, but here's the thing though, is I happen to think that it actually, I would classify it as, I wouldn't say, I don't know. Maybe like suspense and thriller is probably where people are putting it, but I would totally buy it under the genre of horror. The story involves, there's a guy that gets his sister has been sent away to this place because she had a drug problem. It's like a rehab center of sorts, kind of, to get her off the drugs. And then one day he gets a mysterious letter from her that says that she's been relocated to some undisclosed location. But it's this really, great place where everybody's happy and everybody, it goes to their needs. Like a utopia, kind of. And she's inviting him out to come and see her because he's been looking for her for a while. And they haven't seen each other in forever. So he decides he wants to make this a documentary. So he hires a couple of journalists who are A.J. Bowen, who is in Ty West's other movies, is the basically the journalist, and Joe Swanberg is his cameraman, who's in a lot of this. They also all work together on You're Next, which has a lot of cast members from it in this. And they go out to this, they look into it, and it's this really complicated thing where they have to take a plane, then they have to take a helicopter, and they never know the location they're going. They can't know, basically, is the catch of this. So the 3 of them go, and they're immediately confronted by 2 armed guards. Which is off-putting immediately because it's supposed to be like a peaceful kind of utopia, where violence isn't allowed. They tell us later it's about, blocking out the outside world entirely because the outside world is so uglified with violence and racism and anything else you can think of. This is a place where everything is just happy and good. Which probably puts up a red flag immediately.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, given the genre. There's also a real-life event that apparently this movie is hugely inspired by. But it would be kind of a spoiler to say that, what it is. But, you can probably, if you know the story, you can probably get that it's going in that direction. So they finally get in there, and everybody is very happy. Everybody is just talking about how great the whole place is. And everybody's talking about this mysterious guy they all just call Father, who basically runs the whole place. So basically they're settling in, and they're going to have a little party to welcome them to their community. And everything seems perfectly fine, still. And the guy really wants an interview with Father. So the guy's sister manages to work that out. So he's going to give them an interview on a stage right before the party takes place. And that's just going to be what they do. So they hang out and they get to meet some people and they get to learn everything. Because that's what Ty West movies do, is they're very, very, like, slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
And they really build up that creepiness really well. And there's always a monster payoff. And that is no different here. So this interview takes place and we meet Father. And in a brilliant bit of casting, this mysterious father is played by an actor named Gene Jones. Gene Jones is best known for being the convenience store clerk in No Country for Old Men that had to call the coin toss.
Nice.
And it's really... That was an ingenious casting choice because his one big scene in No Country for Old Men, he is totally and completely threatened by Anton Chigurh. And is basically frightened down to nothing in comparison to him. Whereas in this movie, the shoe's kind of on the other foot. And he's basically... He seems really normal, and you can kind of buy that he's kind of taken all these people under his wing and wants to help them. And is a fatherly figure to all of them. But he gets hostile really quick. Because he's worried about... He doesn't like the idea of journalism at all. And he's getting hostile towards the fact that he knows once they leave, they're probably, as journalists in general, they're probably going to tweak the story to make him look bad and to make the community look bad. So he calls them out immediately. And you can kind of see a shift in tone there immediately from the guy that was totally happy to do the interview to the guy that might somewhat be threatening about this whole thing. And it's a really... The interview scene is really long, and the way that tension builds is perfectly paced and put together. So much so that it actually flips the interview, and he actually starts interviewing the interviewer and putting him in his place and shrinking him down. And later on we get the line, they're starting to think something might be wrong, and Father delivers the line, if you put your hand in the dog's bowl, don't be surprised if you get bit. And he just leaves it at that. So, as things start to get a little more ominous, and the movie has a fantastic score. I should probably talk about that real quick. The point of view. I guess technically you could say it's a found footage movie, but not exactly by definition, because it's pretty much, the found footage has already been put together as a documentary, and it's that documentary that we're watching. So it's more like that. Documentaries like Burma VJ, where there's no like interviews or talking heads, it's all footage.
Yeah.
An all footage documentary. And there are moments where they kind of, obviously the whole thing is from a camera's perspective, but they kind of go back and forth, and it's from multiple cameras' perspectives, depending on who's holding a camera and what kind of camera. And there are moments they mostly handle it really well, but there are moments where you kind of question some of the reasons they keep filming are a little reaching, but the fact that it's not like a full-on found footage movie, and it's actually doing it pretty well for the most part, that's easy to forgive. Like I said, even though it's supposed to be real footage, the addition of that score is actually really effective. Because it's not in your face at all, it is just low and ominous throughout. The score never is, like, front and center. It's always just there looming in the background, helping you get that sense of dread. And Ty West is so fucking good at dread. Like, even when nothing is going on, they could even remotely do that. Like, there's a scene where they play basketball with the natives. Nothing going on here, but just throughout the movie from beginning to end, even when everything seems perfectly fine, there's a sense that something's going on. And it's really impressive that he's able to evoke that without even showing a scene that's really that ominous.
Comes off a lot like The Wicker Man, the way you're talking about it.
Yeah, I wrote this down. I also got a lot of Red State vibes.
Yes. I get that too completely.
Gene Jones's performance is really it's definitely its own thing for sure, but it's also really brought back memories of Michael Parks' performance.
Aben Cooper.
Yes. But they're both two different things. To give them both equal credit. And finally, we realize that things are really going wrong when there is this mysterious woman and her daughter. And her daughter doesn't speak because something happened to her. But eventually they're having the shindig and everything's going great. And the daughter just ominously walks around. She looks like a ghost. She's not, no, but it's not a ghost movie or anything. But she looks like a ghost just the way she moves around. And she's always dressed in white and her hair is always in front of her face. And she just hands them a note and then runs away. And it's a really creepy, effective moment too, because this is when kind of the turn happens. It's not like the big turn, but it's kind of when they realize that something is off. They've just had a whole party in the guest's honor, and everything is great. The interview went fine. He was disappointed because the guy's father threw him off so much and basically turned the interview around on him. But they still got great footage out of it, and that's what counts. So just as everything is going great, the little girl walks away. They're over here, and the party's going on over here. The girl walks over from the party and hands them a note and then runs back to the party really fast. And they open the note, and they hold it to the camera, and it says, "Please help us." And then the movie progresses into stuff that you just have to see for yourself. But the slow burn is really great. But that's the thing though, is in a lot of slow burn movies, sometimes it's not even so much building suspense, it's just kind of, you just gonna have to wait for this to go by so you can get to the good stuff. But for this, the good stuff is kind of the whole movie because he manages to keep that tone throughout. Because you're waiting for that sense of dread to turn into something horrifying. And the sense of dread is enough to keep you involved by itself, regardless of what the payoff was. So, yes, I would totally, I would check this out along with the rest of Ty West's filmography if you haven't. He also did the segment in VHS with the Honeymoon, which a lot of people didn't care for that. They thought it was a lot of build-up for nothing, but I actually... There's a couple of moments in that VHS segment that are creepy as fuck. And I just love how this... And I won't say too much, but I will say another thing I really liked about this movie was the fact that they set it up to where the night is the issue. Because they only have a day to do this. Because they're dropped off by the helicopter, and the pilot says, "I'm going to be back at 8 a.m. If you're not here, I'm going to leave you here." So, when the ominous things start to happen, their response is, "Okay, we just have to get through the night, and then we can get out of here." But it turns out that getting through the night is not the problem, and that morning leading up to 8 a.m. is where all of the shit goes down. So... I really, really love horror movies that give you that, they take away that safety net of you're okay as long as it's not nighttime. That's why I love Halloween so much. In broad daylight, you're not safe. And I love that. So, yes, definitely check this out and the rest of his filmography. Just really be prepared for that slow burn because that's what all his movies are about. I am really interested though in his next movie. Ty West's next movie is not a horror movie. Ty West's next movie is a Western revenge movie starring John Travolta and Ethan Hawke. I can't fucking wait to see that. So, he has a couple of movies outside the genre. He did Cabin Fever 2, the straight-to-video sequel. But to my understanding, that was like, he was basically a hired gun. So... But check out the movies that he made like himself with his normal indie crew. Because those are some really wild-ass movies with some really genuine scares in them. Our next movie, which I mentioned earlier, is Trust Me, which is kind of a Hollywood satire written and directed by and starring Clark Gregg, who you probably know as Agent Coulson. He also adapted and directed Choke. So, to kind of give you the dark satirical humor that he has. This is one of those movies that has a really big cast list, but it's more or less a lot of cameos. And he stars as a Hollywood talent agent for children, like child actors.
Life with Mikey?
Yeah, kind of.
Nice.
Darker.
Oh, gotta be. A lot darker.
Yeah, let me go ahead and go into that right now. This movie is a comedy. And it has a lot of, funny scenes. It's not hilarious, but it's, kind of funny. It's a comedy, but it's got a lot of drama in it, too. And sometimes that drama is so hardcore it feels misplaced. Here's the thing. This is a comedy about Hollywood satire. This is one of those movies that kind of starts at the end and then we have to circle back around. The first scene of the movie is Clark Gregg's character laying on the ground outside, surrounded by a crowd of people, and he's bleeding to death. And then the movie starts and it's a comedy. So, to give you that kind of gives you right away what kind of tonal issues this movie has, but it's not enough to condemn it or anything. His character is a former child star who is now turned into this child agent. And he's come across this talent who is a really good young actress named Saxon Charbino, I think is how you say it. And she's basically that, she's also that precocious teenager type I just talked about. But, in not near as grating a way as normal. And basically he is dying to get her signed on, to get her to let him be her agent so he can get her signed on for, the talk of the town is they need a teenage unknown for the female lead in a vampire franchise movie directed by Ang Lee.
Nice.
It's that specific.
Wow. I want to see that movie for real.
So, he also has to battle with her dad. And it's basically him, that's basically what the movie is him trying to convince her to let him be her agent so he can get her this part and be relevant again. Because we eventually get this backstory. His backstory is basically he was somebody's agent, another teenage girl, and something went wrong, and she basically ended up committing suicide at like age 18. So everybody put it on him. So all casting directors hate him, all producers hate him. He can't get a job to save his life. Literally. So he's basically got to fight off everything. There is a completely relentless producer played by Felicity Huffman that hates him. A casting director played by Allison Janney that hates him. A rival agent played by Sam Rockwell who gets everybody. He drives around in his big cars and he wears the scarves and he just has everybody on speed dial. He's in competition with him. And he's basically trying to get involved with his neighbor who is Amanda Peet. Who also kind of shuns him because he's basically the guy that has a crush on her that she has no interest in. So she just kind of has to wave him off every time he shows up. I was getting a lot of... the first thing that I thought of was David Mamet's State in Maine. But I guess it's also getting really, really vague comparisons to movies like The Player. Mm. It's not near... I'm sorry, Clark Gregg, but it's not near as clever or sharp or biting as The Player by any means at all. And I think State of Maine is kind of above it too. Because the main problem with the movie is just how the tone is just so weird. Because it's basically a comedy, but the stuff they throw into it, like there is one scene that threw me off immediately, which was kind of the start of it, was I can understand where it's probably seemed effective on paper, but it just looks really weird amidst a movie like this. She's basically doing her big scene. She's reading with him from the script. And he starts to imagine her in the movie. And we actually get a glimpse of what an Ang Lee vampire franchise movie would look like. And I gotta tell you, that really fucking stands out in a really low-budget comedy about Hollywood satire. She sprouts wings. You've got costumes and setting. They do this twice, by the way. And then there's a whole separate plot about her being molested. And then there's a twist that makes the whole movie basically kind of, I don't know. There's a big twist in Waiting in the Shadows. And another problem is when they kind of loosely reveal this molestation scene, it's her. Obviously, she's like underage, and she's living in a hotel room with her dad. So we see boots on the floor and the showers running in the bathroom, and she is naked under a blanket crying. And they make this big reveal out of it, like it's this big revelation. But they basically hint at it extremely in your face when they're doing the reading scene. Because he's trying to get her to read from a real place, so she starts shouting at a guy. That kind of set up. Because he's obviously, the dad is played up as one of those characters that, just by looking at him, he'd totally be guilty of that. He's got the blonde hair and the mustache and the trailer trash clothing. He's just built it to be that way. Now, that kind of somewhat goes into another thing, but I guess I won't reveal that in case you catch this weekend for some reason. We get a really random backstory about Clark Gregg's character, where back when he was a child star, the thing that changed him was that he had a relationship with and lost his virginity to the girl from Family Affair. The one that had a drug overdose at 18. They gave her a fake movie that she was never in, that they were in together. And the thing that changed when she OD'd, this is real life, by the way, when she died.
I know.
Her OD is what kind of turned him into the sad character that he is. On top of the suicide he supposedly caused. So yeah, it was really hard to tell when this movie was a comedy and when it was doing this really dark shit. I mean, I know when you're doing a satire of Hollywood, it's hard to not go dark. The Player goes to some really fucked up places. But here, it felt really out of place. Like, The Player was dark enough to where the really dark stuff in it didn't seem out of place. This movie feels all over the place. It's not a bad movie at all. And there's, I think Clark Gregg has a lot of ambition as a director. You could see that in Choke, too. Because Choke was done really director-y.
Yeah, I really like Choke a lot.
So he can really... I think Clark Gregg could really do something great as a director. I'm just not quite sure what it would be. I'm sure he'll do it eventually, but it's not Trust Me or Choke yet. But there are some good performances in it. Like, Amanda Peet is kind of hit and miss. When I say hit and miss, I mean either she's really good or she's just kind of there. I guess it depends more on the role more than her. She has a really funny line in the movie, I remember, with, he's trying to hit on her and he's like, so do you want to maybe come over and we can read a script and have a nightcap? And her response to that is, a nightcap? Is Dean Martin going to be there? Of course, as always, Sam Rockwell is great, and he's perfectly cast. Because he's got the, they do this thing where I guess it's an agent thing, where, Clark Gregg has, like, this douche earring in his ear, and Sam Rockwell has a bigger douche earring in his ear.
The Bluetooth?
And there's another thing where he, yes, I believe so.
Yeah, my mom has one too, actually.
The very first scene, yeah, he's sitting in his car talking.
Yep, my mom has one of those, actually.
Because the very first scene of the movie is he's talking to Clark Gregg on the phone, and then the scene ends with him. They're supposedly in two totally separate places, and then the scene ends with the car Sam Rockwell's in rear-ending Clark Gregg's car while he's in it.
Sounds like an HBO television series.
And they do the thing where there's one kid at the beginning. Molly Shannon has one scene. Molly Shannon's always fantastic too. But she only gets one scene as the mother/agent of this, a very overprotective mother/agent of this child.
Nice.
And they fire him, and when the kid's getting into the car, he drops his little game thing. That's what they call it, the game thing, because you can't really tell which one it is. So his plan is to pick it up and return it to him at a school play where he's going to scout out another kid. I think they made a pedophile joke there, I'm not sure, because there's kind of a funny delivery where he's standing outside the school and they walk up and ask him what he's doing, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just looking at a kid." So anyway, he shows up at the school and he's there to return the game thing to the kid. And Sam Rockwell pulls up in his douche-mobile and gets out and has the new game thing that isn't in storage for another month. And the kid basically says, "Fuck you" to Clark Gregg. I think the kid actually flips him off. So, like I said, Felicity Huffman has a really great part for her, even though she's not in it enough. Where she's one of those cutthroat producers that will pretty much do anything to make Clark Gregg stay the fuck away from this.
Like she was not in Sports Night.
And, of course, to add to that, his name is on the poster, but I'm pretty sure he's only in it because Felicity Huffman had a major part, which probably just kind of said, "Hey, here's a small part, you can just have a little pop-in cameo."
Okay.
Yeah, it's William H. Macy as Amanda Pete's boss.
Nice.
He's got a ponytail and a mustache, and he's really protective of her. And it's a really funny... I wish his character had at least one more scene, but he only has the one. It's pretty much a cameo, but somehow his name's not on the poster. So yeah, this movie would be... What happens here is it's trying to be symbolic and heavy. But it's just weird. It's just really weird. This movie's fucking weird.
Sounds like it.
But it's not bad. I mean, it's good. Like, it's not like a chore to watch or anything. I watched it just fine, and I wasn't saying like, "Man, this sucks," or "Man, I wish this was over." I was just going, "Man, this is weird." So if you want to check it out of curiosity, it's not bad. And it does do the satire thing well, but a lot of movies have done it a lot better. Yes. And yeah, the young actress that's in it is really, really good. I'm curious to see what else she'll do in her future, because I think she's only done like a TV show or something. Our next to last movie is Chef, which is a new comedy written, directed by, and starring Jon Favreau.
Yes.
We have Colston and Happy Hogan doing two movies together, one right after the other. I didn't do that on purpose. I just now realized it. Wow. So, and this movie is really interesting because, as you probably know, Jon Favreau is the director of Iron Man 1 and 2, and he's also Happy Hogan, and he had the Avengers for a while before he said, "You know what, I think that's too much, we'll give it to Joss Whedon." Or no, he dropped it and Joss Whedon said, "Hey, I'll do it." So it's a little strange and a little surreal, but at the same time not surprising now that, I believe because of that, we can have a very small indie movie that happens to have a gigantic cast list in it.
Yeah.
There are so many A-list names in this cast list that have really tiny parts in this little indie movie.
Yeah, it felt like a Woody Allen movie in that aspect.
So, yeah, actors turned writer-directors often want to be Woody Allen, if you haven't noticed.
Oh, I definitely have.
So, there's kind of, there's a main plot to this movie, but it actually takes a while to get there. Mm-hmm. We start with Jon Favreau, who's this really, really passionate chef. I'm gonna only, since he's the writer and director of this movie, and he pretty much does the cooking on camera, I'm gonna assume this is another passion of Favreau's that he pursued movies instead.
It's a good possibility.
Kind of like how Ramsey did the opposite route with soccer and cooking. And he's in this restaurant that's owned by Dustin Hoffman, who has I don't know if she is a waitress or a hostess. Scarlett Johansson is in this movie, is the point I'm getting at.
She's a hostess.
And she's got black hair and thick eyebrows, and they make her look like Kristen Ritter. I don't know if they were trying to make her look unrecognizable, so it was less distracting.
Like star tattoos, too.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
And then you have his friend cooks that are John Leguizamo and Bobby Cannavale. This cast list is so awesome, we're not even done with it.
That's just the beginning right there.
And they all work in this restaurant, but the trouble is Favreau is a really creative cook. Like, he really wants to break out from this menu they've been doing for years and do some really exotic stuff. But Dustin Hoffman's afraid that won't go well with the public, so he absolutely insists they stick to the menu as always.
Mm-hmm.
And this eventually gets Favreau in a feud with a no-holds-barred food critic played by Oliver Platt. It would have been, unfortunately he's no longer with us, but it would have been a nice little in-joke if it was Peter O'Toole.
Could have been.
Unfortunately it can't now, but... and that's basically where the movie takes off, because... weird plot development, a very, very, very important plot point in this movie is Twitter.
Yeah.
Because, which is actually clever the way they use it, because this happens so much. The food critic is bashing him on Twitter,
mm-hmm.
but of course he can't respond, because not only does he not have a Twitter, he doesn't even know how Twitter works. But lucky for him, the second plot of this movie is him trying to not reconcile, but basically trying to have a more stronger bond with his son.
Yes.
Because he spends so much time working that he barely knows his son. So, they bond with his son, showing him how Twitter works, and he makes him an account. And of course he gets popular overnight. But before he goes to bed that night, what gets him so popular is that he calls out the food critic on Twitter. And it starts a Twitter feud. And this eventually starts with him, which eventually goes into him basically placing a bet, more or less, where he tweets Oliver Platt's character and says, "I'm going to completely redo the menu if you come back and do another review, and I'll show you that my food is great."
Yeah.
Well, the trouble is that he goes there and Dustin Hoffman's not having it.
Nope.
And he absolutely will not let the kitchen run unless they're going off the menu. His menu. So, Favreau says, "Fine, I'm leaving." And he asks Cannavale if he's going to join him, but he's basically the lone wolf now. So he goes and he cooks up the whole thing while they cook up the same old shit for Oliver Platt. And he tweets that Favreau's character is a no-show and, he's just given up. Well, Favreau sees this and goes into the restaurant and blows up at him in person, which turns into a viral video, which gets him even more famous. And they make jokes about the internet, like Cannavale's line about, well, half of them love you and half of them hate you. That's just the way the internet works.
Yep.
So Favreau gets the idea that he's got to get out of this restaurant, but he has to keep cooking. So he decides that he's going to... The whole movie they've been trying to convince him, his ex-wife, who's Sofia Vergara... Yes, this is a very self-serving role for Jon Favreau. He has an ex-wife played by Sofia Vergara, and he's having a sexual relationship with Scarlett Johansson.
Yep.
Go figure. He already made the scene in Iron Man 2 where she has her legs wrapped around his neck. Not very subtle, Favreau, but anyway, who wouldn't if you're in the writer-director's position?
Exactly.
Everybody's been trying to convince him to open one of those food trucks. Mm. But to him, that's bottom of the barrel, and he doesn't want to do it.
Yep.
So eventually he takes a little vacation with Sofia Vergara and their son, and they basically have a nice little reconciliation, kind of, between them. and helps him bond some more. And they have this amazing Mexican food. So that's when he basically gets the idea to open a...
Cuba.
Yes. So, I was going to say Mexican food truck, but yes.
Cubanos.
And he recruits John Leguizamo to help him out. And basically, that's what the main plot of the movie is. It's them going around and being a success with this food truck while he bonds with his son.
Yep.
And that's the main plot. And we have another appearance. It is the... it's his ex-wife's ex-husband that he needs help from. And this, he's on the poster, and he's got that credit, but it's a cameo.
It's definitely a cameo.
It's Robert Downey Jr. But once again, being Favreau's movie, this isn't a surprise at all.
No.
Because they're like best friends now, after the whole Iron Man. They might have been before Iron Man, I don't know, but they are now. And speaking of Favreau's best buddies, being a movie written and directed by Jon Favreau, I have to say I was a little disappointed. I was looking everywhere, but I didn't see Vince Vaughn or Peter Billingsley in this movie. I was just waiting for their cameos everywhere. I didn't see either one of them, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a really nice comedy. It's a really nice feel-good movie. Don't be put off by the R rating. It's only for language.
Yeah.
And there's really not that much of it. I think it's one of those, they might have just been 2 fucks over the fuck limit, and that got the R rating.
Could be, but Favreau is a little hardcore in language a little bit in the kitchen.
Yeah, speaking of hardcore language in the kitchen, I kind of thought this movie was going to go another way for a second if I didn't already know what the real plot was. Because I love this show so much, I don't care if it's a guilty pleasure. For a brief point in time in the movie, they entertained the idea of Favreau's character trying to regain fame by going on Hell's Kitchen.
Yes.
Which I thought would have been a great idea for this movie to go into. I at least wanted a Ramsay cameo, but no, there are a lot of cameos I was expecting we didn't get.
Maybe he could have been the food critic.
Yeah.
That would have been even better.
Because that's what he does. He goes into For Kitchen Nightmares. That would have been another great plot point to have the food truck or Dustin Hoffman's restaurant be on Kitchen Nightmares.
Yes.
That would have been fantastic. No, Gordon Ramsay's got to be up 24/7 doing his stuff anyway. So
yeah.
So it's okay. It's a really nice movie. It's funny, but it's not hilarious. And it's good, but it's not like great. But it's heartwarming and it hits all the right places. Some of the cast feels a little wasted. Like, I think Scarlett Johansson is capable of a lot more than she was able to show in this part.
Yeah.
With the little screen time he had, Hoffman was really good. Mad Dustin Hoffman is one of the... Dustin Hoffman's only like 5 feet tall. And everybody knows him for like his more, easygoing roles, but, or playing like nervous characters. Dustin Hoffman in Mad is one of the scariest things you can be on the other end of.
Don't forget he's Captain Hook.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that.
I understand that's the way on a movie set too.
Nice.
But there's, like, if you watch his Inside the Actor's Studio, there is a point in time where he's showing them how to do it, and he acts like he, like, points out somebody in the crowd and just goes off on them. If I was whoever he was looking at, I would have fucking shit myself. The great scene in Tootsie when he says, "I'm acting up here." And we get Mad Dustin Hoffman in this, so that's great.
Yeah, we do. We get cursing Dustin Hoffman in this movie, too.
I kind of wish Downey had more of a cameo. He really doesn't get much of anything to do here.
No.
He just kind of serves his purpose and then he's gone.
He's got 2 scenes he's done.
I think it's just one.
No, it's the scene where he shows up right by the food truck for like a second.
I didn't even see him.
Yeah.
Okay. He just blew right past me. I got to go to the bathroom. It might have been then.
I think it was, actually.
I was going to go... Like I said, Bobby Cannavale and Leguizamo are really funny. Leguizamo's got the funny sidekick thing down. Sofia, I don't know, a lot of people aren't Sofia Vergara fans, but I like her, and she's like not only is she, you know, good in her part, but she just has this, I don't know if it's just the way she looked or the way Favreau was shooting her, but she had this really radiant way about her. She looked really great. And she's very downplayed. I think the reason a lot of people don't like Sofia Vergara is because she's so over the top on Modern Family. But here she's very, you know, underplaying and very calm. So if you want to get a better idea of her, she's really good here.
Don't go see this movie on an empty stomach. I'm telling you right now, the forking screens that AMC have are going to make a killing with this movie.
It's really funny that reference is in it too, because I had just watched last night's Hell's Kitchen episode on my DVR before we left today.
Nice.
Alright, our last movie came out on DVD, I think, this past Tuesday. I always get confused on the DVD release dates. It's either it's already out on DVD this Tuesday or it's coming out this coming Tuesday. Somewhere, we're in between somewhere. It's a small, not really known at all movie called The Pretty One, which stars Zoe Kazan, who you might know from Ruby Sparks.
Yes.
I was immediately put off by this movie when I saw that it starred her before I even watched it. Only because the first movie, not counting Revolutionary Road, the first movie I saw her in that she was the star of was this indie movie from like 2010 called The Exploding Girl.
Oh yeah.
And that movie is so excruciating. I think it just put me off of her. But, you know, with this and Ruby Sparks and a couple other movies, I think she was in Meek's Cut Off somewhere. She's not a bad actress at all. The Exploding Girl just left a really bad impression on me. Okay, let's talk about this movie for a second, because this movie is really interesting. Oh god, that was a hiccup. This is a really bad time to get them. We're on the last goddamn review. This movie is really interesting because it's got a really high concept, and I don't know exactly... With this movie's concept, I don't really know what it is. Like, while I was watching it. About an hour and 10 minutes in, it's only about an hour and a half. No, it's like an hour 25. And about an hour and 10 minutes in, with like 15 minutes to go, they clear up what's what. Kind of. But for most of this movie, what made it so intriguing is I had no idea what was going on. Because the way the plot is set up is it's either one thing or another. And they're not straightforward on what's going on exactly. Zoe Kazan plays a dual role as Laurel and Audrey, who are twin sisters. So, their mother is dead, and Laurel has stayed at home with their dad, who's John Carroll Lynch, who's Norm Gunderson and Arthur Lee Allen, if you needed help, and the prison guard in Face Off. And he's basically, all she does is take care of him. Like, he does nothing for himself, and she basically... It's so creepy to the extent that not only does she care for him and take care of him, she wears her dead mother's clothes. That's how stuck to home she is. But Audrey has already left the house and moved out of town and is a successful real estate agent out of town. But she's come back home to visit, and they hang out, and we get to know their sisterly bond and everything. And so finally, Audrey gets into Laurel's head and says, "This is creepy, you're wearing Mom's clothes, and Dad can't do anything for himself while you're still here. You need to come and live with me." So, after some convincing, they pack up and they leave. And as they're leaving, they stop to get her looking better. They get her a change of clothes, and they get her out of their mom's clothes. And they're going to get her a haircut. So, she's sitting in the chair, and she doesn't know what she wants, so she just says, "Just cut my hair like Audrey's." So now she's wearing clothes that Audrey would buy, and she's got Audrey's haircut. So, they're driving back home, and they get into a car accident. and Audrey gets killed. And Laurel ends up with amnesia. And she wakes up. And everybody is calling Laurel Audrey. Because they think she's Audrey, because she looks like her now. Because Audrey, the real Audrey, was burned beyond recognition in the crash. So, as far as they're concerned, it's Laurel that's burned beyond recognition. But the trouble is when Laurel wakes up, she has amnesia. So she doesn't know if she's Laurel or Audrey. But everybody else thinks she's Audrey. The big question this movie raises through the whole thing, that it took me forever to figure out, and I think they were doing it on purpose. I'm going to give the movie the benefit of the doubt and say they were doing it on purpose. Because it kind of hints like it might be one thing, and then it kind of hints like it might be another. But the big question is, does she really have amnesia and believe that she's Audrey? Or does she know that she's Laurel and she's pretending to be Audrey to get Audrey's attention? Because the title comes from the fact that Laurel was the reject and Audrey was the desirable one. Because what she starts to do is be Audrey and live Audrey's life. And they keep throwing hints as to whether or not it could be, because there's a scene where they're at Laurel's funeral, and Laurel blows up at everybody, saying, you didn't treat Laurel well enough, and you took her for granted, and all that. You can't tell if it's her as Audrey angry that people took advantage of Laurel, or if it's Laurel in her subconscious screaming at them for not appreciating her. It could be one or the other.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time. The movie does eventually clear up which is which, but the whole time you're kind of questioning that back and forth. Because it could really be either one the whole time. There is a subplot with a guy that Audrey was apparently dating, who's Ron Livingston, who actually has a pregnant wife that she works for. And there's the guy next door that she hated, played by Jake Johnson. Naturally, Audrey hated him, but Laurel is falling for him as Audrey, because he always had a crush on her. And of course, she doesn't see him the same way Audrey did. But of course, everybody does know about the car wreck, so they just kind of play off the amnesia. Even though it is weird that for most of the movie she has this gigantic wound on her head, but then after a while it just disappears. It's like they got tired of putting the makeup on her. But it's really interesting to watch this movie and kind of try to figure out what exactly is going on. And they do go into, it does go into love story territory, because once the Ron Livingston thing is kind of a throwaway plot, really. It's kind of pointless. She eventually starts to fall for Jake Johnson's character. And Jake Johnson is a really, even though New Girl gets on my nerves, Jake Johnson is a surprisingly appealing romantic actor, love interest. And they do this thing where they bond with, like, they do this thing where they go into the neighbor's pool and swim while they're not home, and they pretend to be the neighbors, and that's like an ongoing joke between them. And Audrey is like this fantastic painter, and she has like a replica of the Mona Lisa. And basically the way they find each other is Ron Livingston punches him in the face. So she brings him in to heal him, and he starts bleeding all over her Mona Lisa. And there's this, it's funny the way it starts to escalate, because his face is dripping blood and it drips down onto the painting, and then he starts to try to wipe it away and it just smears, and his whole response to this is, fuck, and it just gets worse. But eventually she just lets him keep it because he loves her paintings, which is confusing to him because the Audrey that he knew hated him, and this Audrey, who's actually Laurel, really likes them. Which may or may not be an emotional payoff later. And they do the twin scenes pretty well. Like, they're actually really seamless. There is one scene where they're both, I don't know why this one of all things, because the camera's sitting still, but the one scene where it kind of looked off was the scene, it's also the poster for the movie, where they're both laying in their beds. and it's an overhead shot. There you can kind of, when they both turn over at the same time and face each other, you can kind of tell there's special effects at work there, or split screen at work there, but for the most part that's totally seamless, and she does surprisingly, I don't know if she does it as well as Armie Hammer did, but she does do the twin thing really well. I think she plays up Laurel's innocence a little over the top sometimes, but I think she could have downplayed it and still made Laurel and Audrey distinguishable. One of the problems with this movie that's really, really might get under your skin, it certainly got under mine, is... and of course, you know, it's a movie starring Zoe Kazan, so I guess you can expect this. And Jake Johnson's in it, and you're used to him being the love interest of Zoe Deschanel. This movie, despite how intriguing it is, has a really, really fucking unbearably, obnoxiously god-awful indie soundtrack. Every time a song came on this movie's soundtrack, I wanted to rip my goddamn ears off. But apart from that, it's surprisingly not bad. And they handle the material really well, and they take it in some interesting places. And its heart never feels like its heart feels genuine. It never feels like it's trying to be manipulative or trying too hard to be a particular thing. So yeah, I'd say it's worth checking out. I don't think it did very well critically, but I would check it out.
To this day, it had made $13,000 in the box office.
Yeah, it came out in theaters back in like February, but it's on DVD now.
Yep.
So that's this video.
Alright, so as always, we're going to do what we normally do. We're going to go through the movies, and you're going to recommend or just tell them to go away. Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Fault in Our Stars.
Please don't. I know you will, but please don't.
The Sacrament.
Yes, definitely.
Trust Me.
For curiosity's sake, sure. It's not going to harm you or anything.
Chef.
Yeah.
And The Pretty One.
Way to go to Fault in Our Stars. You really fucked this up.
Wow, we actually had a pretty positive video today, except for that 1 hour we talked about The Fault in Our Stars. Next week, 22 Jump Street, finally. And looks like we're going to possibly be getting Jersey Boys. And that's next week, isn't it?
It's 22 Jump Street and How to Train Your Dragon.
I know, but there's another one, too.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay, then Jersey Boys is the week after, I believe. And
we're likely going to have, unless something changes, it looks like we might have 4 different horror movies next week.
Yeah.
Wolf Creek 2, Haunt, Willow Creek, and... maybe it's just 3.
Bobcat's horror movie?
That's Willow Creek.
Yes. No, that would be just 3, because the Sacrament would have been the 4th.
Okay.
If you were talking about doing a video and nothing but horror movies.
Okay.
Alright, so ends another edition of AJ's Movie Reviews. Join us for tomorrow when Ashley is going to be doing his video game review talking about E3 coming up. And this Sunday we're also going to be doing a really awesome Versus, which I've been wanting to do for a long time. Let's just say there are mirror images of one another. So, we'll go, and you agree with me on that. So AJ, any parting words?
That's it.